Welcome to Owen and Beru's BBQ. Today I have gone a little Rogue One because Chris and Nick are not cooking with me today. Instead, I've invited Chef Shandy to join me to serve up something a little different. Perhaps a little veggie bantha burger washed down with some soy milk, blue soy milk. All right, please welcome to the show Shandy from the broadcast. Thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me. This is exciting.
So give the listeners a little background as to your Star Wars knowledge.
My Star Wars knowledge is next to nothing. I know that Darth Vader is Luke's father.
Okay.
That one really got out there.
And the zeitgeist. I mean, as far as a pop culture thing, I mean, it's hard not to know that. It's like Harry Potter and Voldemort or something, you know? Like they're kind of synonymous.
Yeah. So I know that, but I've never really watched any of the movies. With the little asterisks of, I did watch one of the ones that came out in the 2000s with Natalie Portman.
Okay.
And I don't remember which one.
That's perfect.
It was when I was like halfway through college. So when I watched it, you can imagine maybe my state of mind and why I might not remember all of it. And also, I was living in France at the time, so I was watching it dubbed in French.
That's cool. Yeah.
So I really don't remember any.
Right.
Happened.
I'm curious as to which one of the prequels that would have been.
It's a mystery.
It's a mystery. If only we knew a time frame in which you lived in France and.
Well, 2002 to 2006. I think it was maybe 2004.
Okay, so maybe Revenge of the Sith, I'm thinking.
Perhaps.
So,
your guess is as good as mine. Actually, your guess is much better than mine.
Okay. Touché, as they say in French.
That's right.
Your knowledge of Star Wars is equal to my knowledge of French.
Oh, well, hey.
So, although maybe just a little bit more because of just my knowledge of artwork and stuff like that. So
yeah,
French painters. Yeah, that's when Jeopardy comes on. That's when I'm like, I got this.
Nice.
Yeah. Anyway, back to the topic at hand. You have done something special though, because of your lack of knowledge of Star Wars. You've watched A New Hope.
I did.
Okay. This is exciting because this is the first time we've talked about this, and you to preface this fell asleep during your first watching, right?
I did actually, and it wasn't.
I'm not trying to throw shade here. You know, this isn't like losing geek cred here. It's more about like I'm curious. You know.
Well, so here's like the whole backstory too. Is when you approached me with this idea, and I was like, yeah, I'll totally watch one of the movies. We've kind of talked about this vaguely for quite a while. Yeah.
I mean, it was kind of floated out there as to where do you start in the Star Wars movies. That was kind of like a big question floating around.
Right, because you would think that start at the beginning would be the logical answer, but with Star Wars, they have to go and make it all confusing. So, like, what is the beginning? So,
real meta.
So I finally got around to watching it, and I had to figure out how to watch it. There's probably better, easier, maybe less legal ways to get it for free, but I just bought it for like $17.
Oh, wow.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah. And that's a commitment to the show, too. I mean, wow.
Yeah.
That'll come up in the patron plug later.
So I purchased the movie, but then I kind of like was putting it off because I had in my mind that it was like 3+ hours of movie. So it was like, when am I going to have the time to sit down to like this mega long movie?
Sure.
And when I actually looked at the movie duration, I was really surprised to see that it's just 2 hours. So I was like, okay, that's like 2 episodes of Westworld. I can do that.
or a good season finale with bonus material, right?
Yeah. There you go. So I sat down to watch the movie, but yeah, I was really tired the first time that I watched it. So I got like halfway through and then fell asleep.
To be fair, this happens with me with Westworld all the time. So
there you go.
We're on equal footing here. And I look forward to watching Westworld. It's just I'll dim the lights, I'll put my feet up, and then it's like before you know it, I'm just okay. I'm out.
Yeah,
So.
It was similar. I was like laying down on the couch. I don't know, like after like a long day of work or something cliche like that. Which is just a perfect time to fall asleep.
But the second time that you approached this and you wrote me back and you were really excited by it now. The movie like spoke to you.
I really liked it. It was really fun. I took notes. So I have some notes about the movie, things that struck me as I went through. And when I finished the movie, I was kind of like, okay, so like now I should watch the next one. So I'm on board, but I did hold back because I thought that this episode would be more fun to record if I had not seen yet any of the subsequent movies.
Yes, sure. So. And for the listeners too, to kind of go on this journey with you as far as like your experience of the Star Wars movies, might be interesting. I mean, I can defer to your notes or I can defer to my notes as far as questions that I have for you. But what character spoke to you? That was one of the things that I was like, which characters kind of like, were you like, I want to know more about them, or that guy? No, didn't connect with.
Well, the first note that I have, and this was answered shortly thereafter, but my very first question is, what is the gold robot guy's name? For a long time, like nobody's talking to him. It's just the other robot dude that's beeping. I totally dig them. They were cute and very nice.
Apparently, the beeping is. He was supposed to be a foul-mouthed droid. He was originally R2-D2 was supposed to speak English, and he was supposed to have a foul mouth. And when they changed that, they still left in the reactions of C-3PO to those. So it goes all the way back to the original R2-D2, cussed like a sailor.
That's awesome. And I will say, like, even though I'm not super familiar with Star Wars, I did see Spaceballs growing up. And that probably stuck with me much more than like anything else. And so I was sometimes like having a hard time separating. Because especially C-3PO and R2-D2, from my memory, they seem exactly the same in space.
Oh, yeah. Joan Rivers pulls off a really great Anthony Daniels. Joan Rivers plays the voice of, I think, Dottie. Is that her name? It's been a while since I've seen Spaceballs. Sorry, Spaceball fans. Yeah.
I do.
Yeah, you're like, whatever, Matt.
That was a long time ago. But I will say the in Spaceballs, the combing the desert scene is something that, like, to this day really makes me laugh. A bad pun is just wonderful. And so when they were actually in the real scene that was then like parodying, I liked that.
This is great. You're answering actually one of the questions I had, which was I was curious if any pop culture references made more sense to you now.
Yeah. Well, the name of this podcast, for example, I now get the joke.
Yeah.
Which is a weird joke.
You can thank Chris for that.
Yeah.
I actually, Chris came up with the title of the show as well as our email, which is theforceiswelldone@gmail.com. So another play on the whole barbecue theme. So,
got it.
Yeah, well done. Yeah.
Yes.
So nobody likes their force rare these days. Okay. Moving on to your notes and your feedback, because this is what I think listeners are going to enjoy.
Okay. Well, that scene where they're like auctioning off the droids, I was like, that kind of reminds me of like a slave auction. This is getting a little weird here.
That was a little weird. Yeah. It's interesting about the whole idea of the droids being servants, and they've. I'll just, I don't want to spoil you on what's to come. So it's kind of, but it's, I don't want to disappoint you either, because it's not like there's a droid revolution that's going to take place in the next 5 movies. So just
Okay.
yeah, it's like what do I tell you? What do I not tell you?
Oh yeah, this is difficult. Because normally I would say like, tell me whatever, but now I'm actually gonna watch them. So yeah.
I can say that C-3PO's character, George Lucas's original vision for him was that he was supposed to be a smooth talking car salesman. So it was almost as if he was supposed to sell himself as being.
Ah.
And Anthony Daniels, when he approached that role, kind of changed that so a bit, and how he read for it. Apparently, George Lucas was like, "Oh, that'll do." Who knows?
Okay.
It was more of an English butler kind of thing, and he was like, "Oh, okay," and he just it was sold on him.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. I like how he turned out. But I guess it is kind of interesting. Like, so they're like robots. Are they human? I feel like we're like circling back to Westworld again.
Mm.
I feel like, I mean, they like think for themselves.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and there's so many different machines we use day to day. I mean, I think of my washing machine a lot of times as a robot that just has one function.
Yes. Yeah.
So
yeah, and I think I would be less shocked to see washing machines auctioned off.
Yeah, sure.
To see like these like very humanoid type things being sold off.
Yeah, separated from their dishwashing babies.
Exactly.
Okay, before this podcast gets any darker.
I will say the next note that I have, and this is kind of something that I noted throughout, is I was really surprised at how whiny Luke is. Like I was expecting him to be like our hero, but he's just a whiny little bitch. Like, what's going on with that?
Yes, and something that he's been made fun of quite a bit.
So when the movies first came out, is that how he was received? Like, was that the intention?
I don't think that that's how he was received at the time. His character, I think his character was, and again, it's a little different for me, because my history in seeing it is through the eyes of a kid, who grew up on a farm. So the idea that Luke's a farmer is like really appealing to me. It's like, like that's a life that I understand. So I think that simple part of Luke, it definitely, it's like he's a boy, but Leia is a woman in a weird way. Like they're different. They're like on different mature levels.
Right. And they're also like siblings who are going to have some sort of like love interest. So we got some Game of Thrones here too going on. Like
I think it was the fact that Lucas didn't really know if he was going to make another movie. So he was kind of, and I think the tying them together came later. I think at this point they were just unrelated. And there's a sequel book that came out called Splinter of the Mind's Eye, and that book there's definitely a lot more hinting going on between Luke and Leia in that book. And rereading that book, it's like, ooh, this is weird. So I want to point that out, and it's good that that they're related. But just their maturity there is kind of at a different level, when you watch the movie.
Yeah, I think I even wrote down somewhere like, how old is Luke supposed to be? Because
19.
Okay, he kind of looks 19 and acts maybe 12.
Well, he's been held back too, and there's a lot of theories that Luke doesn't know how to read. So, yeah,
interesting.
So, I'm just throwing out nuggets of Star Wars lore that I don't know if I really necessarily believe that, but it's basically people saying like, well, he was kind of a backwoods farmer on a backwards world. He was kind of left alone to his own devices and would not have necessarily needed to go into school or needed to learn how to read. But he is really proficient with mechanics, and so that would lead you to believe that he's had some knowledge. It's not just organic, like, oh, these parts go together.
Right.
So
Speaking of reading, though, and parts going together, this was another big question of mine, is how much fanfic has been written about Luke, Leia, and Han Solo?
Oh, I don't know. That's a good question, but yeah, I bet
That was
there's
just like a threesome waiting to happen the whole time.
yes. And considering that Leia is one of the only females in the movie, except for Aunt Beru. At this point, that's the only two women that Luke knows in his life: Aunt Beru and this princess.
Wow.
Yeah.
I will say, one of the things that I said to my husband was like, as I was watching it, was like, God, there's just not like, where are the women? There's not any women in this movie. I was kind of complaining about that. And he was like, it was 1977. And I can kind of take that as an excuse and just go with it. But it is an odd experience to watch a movie that's like 99% male.
Interesting that you mentioned this. I was wondering how much you'd pick up on that. I kind of thought it might be on your radar. There was a woman on Twitter recently that had gone through and watched all of the movies, and basically, I don't know how she did it. I'm sure there's an article out there that kind of breaks it down further, but she basically looked for female representation in all of the movies and had some algorithm to rank them. And A New Hope comes in last with the least amount of female parts spoken, seen. And the most recent movie, The Last Jedi, came in number one with like 46% representation.
Ooh,
whereas a New Hope was at 12%.
And even so, like Princess Leia, I love in the hair. I like her style. And like I like that she's kind of a badass.
Mm-hmm.
And she'll like take the gun and like, but she's not a very good shot. Like any of the scenes where she was taking over and shooting, like she didn't actually hit anyone. And I was also really confused by her reaction to Han. Like in the same scene, let's see, where is this in my notes? Okay, yeah. So there's a scene where Han goes, if we can just avoid any more female advice, we ought to be able to get out of here.
Oh, yeah.
And Luke kind of goes, dirt? And then like, well, let's do this then. And then and Leia doesn't really react, but I think she's kind of off put by it, but she doesn't really act. And then literally like 2 minutes later, she's fawning over his courage. Like, oh, well, he is courageous, that one. Like, how did that happen?
Well, again, it's the 70s. So people just, I don't know, maybe they were all high and they could forget about, they could put away their differences back then. It's like only one side's getting high right now.
Yeah.
So anyway, as far as Leia, though, I'm glad that you kind of picked up on that. I think Leia as a character in movies pushes that bar a little bit further. As she comes along, she's her role in Star Wars is a little different. At that point in time, like so prior to 77, like having that female that's going to grab the gun, that's going to shoot and try to be as tough as the guys. And she's really tough as nails, as people have pointed out in hindsight, because she's just witnessed her entire world destroyed, right?
Yeah.
But she's still comforting Luke because he lost his mentor, who he knew for maybe like a couple hours. Like, how long did Obi-Wan and Luke hang out? Like, so yeah, he just died. By the way, she sent for him, so she actually has just as much hope riding on Obi-Wan Kenobi. It seems as though they should be comforting each other in that moment. But
It's funny that you'd say that, because I did notice that Luke seemed to mourn the loss of Obi, more than he mourned the loss of his aunt and uncle, who were ostensibly his parents. Like, there was like no emotion. It was like, oh fuck, they're dead.
They do have that really great music, which I love in that scene when he goes to see. And, because Obi-Wan's like, no, Luke, you can't do anything, and he goes anyway, and he sees their skeleton. I mean, he actually sees a more horrific death for his parents that raised him.
Basically, yeah.
From a baby. And this old guy that he knew, he heard about. I mean, it'd be like if he was crying over some homeless person that was that me or you? I just heard the email ding in my head.
Oh, it must have been you.
Okay. That's just the voices in my head. Much like Luke, right?
Yes, that's true. Yes. Took him a long time to kind of catch on to that, though. He's just not the smartest. And definitely lacks in emotional maturity. Because it's interesting that to get back to you talking about Princess Leia comforting Luke, that's also, though, so typical of she's going through her own thing, her entire world just exploded literally, and yet for what I don't know, he's in the dude role of oh, something bad happened to me, so she then has to be the nurturer. It's okay, yeah Luke, I'm not a fan.
Not a fan of Luke. Okay,
no.
Well, hopefully he can earn some of your good graces back. I will say that he does come off, in hindsight, looking somewhat like a doofus. And Han as well.
Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Not a huge fan of him either, but I did kind of at the end, the trio. That's when I was like, fanfic. This has been done.
And those three, I mean, after Star Wars is released, that trio and the stories that come out of them, in the comic books, I mean, it really does center around those three, much in the way that Star Trek, if you're ever familiar with that, revolves around three dudes. So yeah, Kirk, Spock, and Bones. So.
Okay, I've heard the first two of those names. No, but I'm talking fanfic more like Slash.
Oh, sure. No, I know where you're going with that. And I'm not opposed to reading anything that you want to write up. I've read Nick's how he would redo the prequels. So I've read his fiction.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So
interesting.
But I think your fan fiction, though, sounds really, really next level. 50 Shades of Force.
Yeah, there you
go. Since we're on the elephant in the room about maybe we'll just say that for the end, because that is the giant explosion. There's a lot of sexual euphemisms that I pull away from the last battle scene, which is these tiny little one-man fighters trying to penetrate this big giant egg shape.
Oh my God!
I just witnessed Shandy's mind being blown.
Yes.
And all of the things that have been said in that whole final battle, and I do imagine that you'll probably watch this at some point just to reaffirm these, but all of those things that they say kind of go with I don't know, they're there. I can't shake him, or pull up, Luke, pull up. It's coming in too hot. You got one on your back. There's all of these different things that they say, all the way up to the very end, where he has to let go with his feelings.
How did I miss this? And then they're all glowing at the ceremony.
They are glowing. Yes, you're right. And how does he blow it up? It's not just with the Force. He has to use that that good sage wisdom from his good old buddy, the scoundrel Han, comes right in at the last minute. You're all clear, kid. Now let's blow this thing and go home. Yeah, it's there. It's totally there.
That's awesome.
Okay. I'm glad that you enjoy. I've been down this road a couple times, talked about this. It's there, though. I mean,
it's like glaringly obvious now that you're saying it. I'm a little bit disappointed in myself that I didn't. I was not there. I think I was still just kind of like, but the Luke is so nerfy.
Yeah, he does. And how does he get the pilot? Like, even when you watch it the first time through, were you kind of wondering, like, how did he get this pilot's job? Like, they're just throwing anybody in these X-Wings these days?
Yeah. Yeah. I was like, so there seemed to be this, like, really important briefing on like, you know, galactical security. And they're just, like, allowed to be there. And it's like, okay, well, they just had this whole ordeal, so maybe, like, the princess is vouching for them and whatever. But then, like, Han's just going to peace out right after that. So, like, he just was privy to all this really important information, and he's just going to, like, ciao. That seemed a little bit weird. And then all of a sudden, yeah, Luke is just like, oh, you're going to be a star pilot. There you go. Somebody seemed to have a question. It was like, oh, no, I can totally vouch for him. Like, when did that happen? Like, he was on a farm before.
Yeah, so I think maybe you're referring to the scene with Biggs Darklighter, which they added to the special editions. They changed around A New Hope several times, and I'm somewhat sad that you probably had to watch the special edition version.
That's so weird. Why would you do that?
What's that?
Why would you change around a movie after?
Man, that's a whole can of worms, Shandy. I mean, seriously.
I'm kind of running into the same thing with Arrested Development because
the changes.
Fourth season, I'm like, what the hell? Like, I don't
know what happened to the fourth season.
I don't understand anymore.
I've rewatched the fourth season, and I'm like, I don't remember that guy. Was that
exactly
like?
Yeah, like I thought it was significantly shorter.
Yeah.
What happened?
And when are they going to release the rest of season 5? Because
I don't know, and I'm not sure that I really care because it's meh.
Yeah, I really like Maybe's character. She's still one of my favorites, and I love it when she. I love the second half, or at least when she retires to the old folks' home.
That's pretty great. Yeah, her playing an elderly woman is amazing.
It was probably like my favorite part of this season.
Yeah. It was maybe the only actually funny part of the season.
Fair, yeah,
yeah.
Okay, so Star Wars though, blowing up stuff. You're right. Why would Han be in that briefing? We were talking about the special edition versions, the rewrites, the changes. One of the very first changes Lucas made was originally when Star Wars came out, and you saw that scroll at the very beginning that says Episode 4. Well, originally it didn't say Episode 4, and that was added in about 1980 or 79, before Empire came out. And Star Wars was such a popular movie that for years afterwards, I mean, even in 78, 79, they would release it in the summertime as a movie in different theaters just to get people to come in and watch it, you know, and it was still a happening thing because you couldn't watch it just on TV or VCR. Mm-hmm. So, anyway, yes, Lucas has kind of mutilated a lot of the original stuff. Imagine, if you will, if somebody were to go back into The Wizard of Oz and say, oh, I could really make this part a little bit better. But every time they added to it, they just kept making it worse. So,
yeah,
I'm familiar with this with painting, you know, because at some point the painting's alive and electric, and you're like, yes, this is awesome. And then you start working it, and at some point you're just like, you've lost it, you know, you've lost that spark. So, well, the big Starklighter scene that I was referring to, though, is Luke's childhood friend. And this kind of harkens to why Luke might be a little bit stunted in his maturity. All of his friends have kind of grown up and gotten to leave. They've gone on to Starfleet Academy.
Right. And he has to stay home.
Yeah, he does. And work on the farm.
Oh, well, maybe if I get it working good enough, then I can go next year.
Yeah, it's really sad. Meanwhile, Princess Leia is trying to get these stolen plans to Obi-Wan Kenobi that might save the galaxy, really. And meanwhile, Luke's just kind of, oh, gee, golly, guys. Yeah. Okay, so what else do you have in your notes there that we haven't covered?
Well, so there's just kind of going back to the auctioning off of the droids. I thought it was interesting that then later when they go to that bar.
Oh, yeah.
Which is also a big scene in Spaceballs.
Yes.
I remember vaguely. Anyway, they say that they don't serve droids and they have to go outside. It's like, oh, this is like, were they trying to make a statement?
You know, it's interesting that you pick up on those things because in a bottle, A New Hope does have some commentary there. I think in the grand saga of movies, some of that, maybe some of Lucas's critique of droids and being an ownership slave kind of society. Maybe that was in his initial thoughts, and eventually he just was like, I can't do that. More laser swords. So, okay. I think it's so. What has been retconned or what has been rewritten about the guy behind the bar is, he's had some. For one, he's had a traumatic experience with droids killing his family, I think. So he has like some kind of trauma with droids. But on a simple bartender point of view, droids take up space. So
because they're not going to order.
They're not going to order. They're just going to take up space, and then you can't sell as many drinks.
Interesting.
So you can take either of those, the retcon, like the backstory that's been rewritten about him. I don't know if it's retcon. That's not the proper use, but Nick will point that out when he.
Well, it's over my head, so.
Okay. Well, it's good that you picked up on that, though. We don't serve their kind here.
Yeah. One big question that I had, how can James Earl Jones be Luke's father?
I guess we're going to have to find that out together. Is how
Luke's pretty white.
Yeah, he is. And the actor David Prowse, who is the actual physical actor that plays Darth Vader, he had spoken his lines, and he has this like Scottish kind of brogue accent.
Whoa.
Yeah, and he thought the whole time that his lines were going to be spoken. It wasn't until afterwards.
Oh, shit.
Yes, it wasn't until afterwards that it was kind of like, oh, you've been replaced. So, and it was a big bone of contention, post Star Wars for David Prowse, is the fact that he, felt kind of pushed over and brushed aside. So, yeah, interesting that you'd point that out. But yes, that's how James Earl Jones became Luke's father.
Because I think that they're like saber fighting when he says it, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, because I'm just wondering, at some point does he take off the mask? How does that work? Or does he just never take off the mask? Because then that would work. But if he,
I think we're talking about a couple more podcasts here before we break this stuff down. Okay.
All right.
Hopefully we can have some more summer Shandy barbecues happening where
yes, perfect.
you can watch Empire Strikes Back and then we can discuss what happens between this because it's coming.
Yeah. Much like Luke in that final battle scene.
He was coming the whole time. So, but only 2 of those protons actually went down that chute. So there was one where the guy missed it and he says, "Oh, just pecked it on the surface." Yep, it says that. So
Oh my God, I'm totally rewatching that. Now that I own the movie, because I paid my 17 or whatever dollars.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know. I feel like I could have just sent you my DVDs. And,
Oh, do I have a DVD player?
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's hard,
Well,
hard these days.
so A New Hope, though, the last battle scene, though, and that whole lead up, because there's really kind of three parts to the movie. There's the Tatooine, is the beginning, and it's basically a lineage of Leia gives the droids the information. The droids need to find Obi-Wan Kenobi, but they find Luke, who finds Obi-Wan Kenobi, and then they find Han Solo to get off the planet, and then all together they find the princess at the heart of this monstrous city, right? And the Death Star is its own set piece in the middle. And then the last part is this battle sequence of them escaping, and then you see Yavin 4, you see kind of this lush green life. And if we're just looking at A New Hope, you can kind of see the wasteland that you begin with, and the jungle and the life that you end with, and this city in the middle that is kind of terrorizing the galaxy, right? So these are kind of larger themes that are working there in that movie.
All right.
Well, maybe I'm stating the obvious here, but I just thought kind of,
No.
You're like, Matt's thought about this way much more than I have. Yeah, it's fine. I have spent some time with these movies. Yeah. So, okay, so the battle at the end is also this idea of Luke. He has to turn off the computer. He has to push away technology and embrace the Force, which is from living things around him. So there's this concept that Lucas was pushing in the movie about that idea of the Force, or this something from nature, and we can all get behind the Force because it sounds legitimate. It's like, well, you have gravity, it's a force of nature, so the Force can just be this living thing that works, and that he ultimately had to turn off technology in order to destroy it. So
well, and that was kind of one of my questions, though, too, was, well, actually, two things. The lightsabers, are those related to the Force?
So
it seemed like, the other people didn't have them.
Right. Well, initially, Lucas had this whole thing that the lightsaber stemmed from your energy of the Force, and that there was some kind of Force connection to the lightsaber, and that there was kind of an energy going forward. And so the early versions, they have two hands on the lightsaber because they want to invoke the idea that it's heavy or that it's powerful, even though there's that scene where Luke's like, what's this thing? He's just kind of waving around like...
I feel like I kind of did that same thing.
You did. And I'm glad you mentioned that, because I wanted to point out to listeners who may or may not know, we've formally met each other on May the 4th this year.
That's right. Yeah, this is really coming together.
Yeah, it's almost like we somehow planned it, but didn't. The Force just willed it to happen.
That's right. Yeah. So that brings me to my second question. Why is it that Luke, like, that the Force is so strong with him? Is it like hereditary because his dad was one of these Force people? Is it he's just like the chosen one? Like, oh,
so you've heard about this chosen one thing?
Maybe not. I don't know. But I mean, okay. I've also, like, I feel like that's a very recurring theme, like in the Bible and Harry Potter, and so.
Well, I don't really want to answer these questions for you because I feel like they have to unfold. But on another level, I feel like I should just cut to the chase because they don't really explain this in the original trilogy. So, so the original trilogy only explains so much, and you can think of the prequels as Lucas going through and being like, "I have to explain everything now." and so there's cycles, there's thematic cycles between the two. So the prequels and the original trilogy, they kind of work in a I don't know. There's things you can read about it.
It's kind of like the Old Testament and the New Testament. It's like, so we have this existing text and we're going to adopt it.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, by the time, A New Hope comes around, they're talking about the ancient ways, this old religion, it's dead, and they kind of refer to it as kind of something in the past. So, there is an explanation, but I feel like I shouldn't.
Well, so question then, would it be fair to say that the original trilogy is kind of like the original 7 Harry Potter books, and that the prequels and everything around it is kind of like Fantastic Beasts and all?
Yeah, that would be a good comparison.
So it's like really not canon, anything that's not the original trilogy?
Well, no, it is canon. Yeah, as much as some fans don't want to make it. So I guess that's where it would differ, because the prequels, as flawed as they are, and they have their issues, they still came from the mind of George Lucas, and he still had full creative control over all of those movies. And it's like, right or wrong, it's kind of cool to see one person who has a vision and a boatload of money just say, this is what I'm going to do. I mean, you don't have that, you don't have that much with a lot of franchises. So, we kind of danced around it, but I wanted to bring up this idea of myth, because there's a series on Netflix right now. They've released it. It's been out for a while, but it's Joseph Campbell and the Power of Myth. And I don't know if you've ever read any Joseph Campbell or heard any of his talks. You might want to wait to watch those until after we get through.
Okay.
It might spoil. Like, they do play a couple clips from Star Wars. I would recommend, though, for listeners, The Hero's Adventure, the very first one. You're either going to like it or you're not. But I think it's something that you would enjoy, Shandy, because of Joseph Campbell. He really ties together world religions and in a way that he connects the dots. And in Lucas pulled from Joseph Campbell and the Hero of a Thousand Faces. So the hero, So the Netflix series, though, worth a watch. Maybe add it to your queue and then come back to it. You probably could watch the first one. I meant to watch it today just to see which ones they revealed, and by the time I got back to it, I was like, oh, they're showing this scene? Yeah, you should wait. So
okay.
But worth the watch, and also for listeners that might be wanting something that relates to Star Wars, but deals with the myths in a larger, kind of broader context.
Mm-hmm.
So, because there are some of those themes that come up in this A New Hope.
So basically, once I get through like 1,000,000 hours of...
Fortunately, the original trilogy stays to pretty close 2 hours each.
Okay. Are the prequels, are they like 3 hours? Where did I get this idea in my head?
So the longest one, or the longest 2 Star Wars movies, is The Last Jedi at about 2.5 hours. The most recent one is 2.5 hours. And Attack of the Clones, I believe, is close following that with like 2 hours and 22 minutes or something. Don't quote me on it, people. I just... It's out there. You can look it up on IMDb, but I know those are the 2 longest.
Okay.
And so let's see. Any characters you hated? Well, I guess we did talk about that. Luke. Mostly Luke. That's good. I like this honesty here about that. Did it live up to your expectations? Because Star Wars kind of has a threshold of like, this is going to be great. You're going to love it. I
mean, I don't really know what I was expecting, honestly. I think, if anything, I was expecting to be somewhat confused because, like, it's new to me and people, have this, like, vocabulary of Star Wars that I don't have. And and I was expecting it to be super long, which it wasn't, and which is maybe just comes from the fact that there are so many.
Yeah, and I think also too just that if you're coming from Harry Potter too, because Harry Potter, it's a 3-hour movie. I took my son to a Harry Potter themed birthday party the other day.
Nice.
And the mom's like, "Oh, well, we're gonna watch the movie later," and I'm like, looking at I'm picking him up at 7, like 3 hours from now. So unless you got that thing rolling, like,
it's not gonna happen.
Yeah.
yeah, maybe. But yeah, and I think I was expecting it to be, I don't know, just like, not like outdated, but like I was expecting, like the special effects and everything to be like super hella old. And I will say that I think, so I was, happily surprised that it wasn't 3 hours long. I wasn't like as confused as I thought I would be, because it was actually really simple.
Yeah.
I feel like certain characters weren't actually, I don't know that any character I felt like was super well developed. Mm-hmm. And I was able to just remind myself that there are a billion more. So like there's more time for them to get developed. So like that was fine. I could accept that. And then I was actually really pleasantly surprised by how much it's held up in terms of like just like visual effects and what it looks like, and the special effects. Like it's like pretty good. Like there's nothing that's super shocking. Like, oh my God, that looks so old and outdated. Like it was, yeah. So I imagine for people who saw it back in the day, it must have been like such a big deal.
Yeah, well, and that it did. It definitely launched a lot of different movies, a lot of different space movies, and I think one of the aspects though is when Lucas goes through in '96, I want to say, and he I think or was it '97? Anyway, when he does release the special edition, he does improve a lot of some of the special effects. I apologize. My credit card machine is going to process now. I podcast for my work. FYI, a little backstory here. Every night at 9:30 on the dot, it has to do this processing thing. So if it beeps, it's not R2. Okay, so moving forward, Empire Strikes Back. Things that you get to look forward to with that is more of that character development. Ugh. Stupid machines. It's a robot. I'm gonna sell it on an auction next.
Exactly. And then like, I don't know, free your mind from technology and feel the force.
Feel the force, yeah. Who needs restraining bolts?
Just get paid through the force.
Did you notice that they put restraining bolts on the droids too? They have these little bolts so that if they act up, they zap them.
I did not.
Yeah.
That's really interesting. An interesting form of chains, yeah.
Yeah. Wow. So there's a scene where R2's acting up and they push the button and he stands at attention. So and then
I'll have to rewatch. I thought about trying to watch it again before this podcast. And then I just didn't end up getting around to it, but I think it would be more interesting to rewatch now that we've talked about it. So I know like a couple of things to look for.
Well, in that aspect of R2-D2, he's smart and he's crafty because he's the one that tricks Luke to get the restraining bolt off of his shell so that he can escape to go find Obi-Wan Kenobi.
When does that happen?
R2-D2 is the real hero of the movie.
He's adorable. I really liked him.
So he gets the secret transmitter here. He gets the plans, the stolen plans for the Death Star. So he's carrying them the whole time. Gets sold to Luke, and he's just like, "Forget you, dude!" Like, and so he pops out that projection of Princess Leia saying, "Help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi."
Right, which Luke is like immediately. It's like love at first sight, but you can't see her. That was another one of my questions. Like, how can you?
So, I should preface that there is another girl in Star Wars. She didn't make the final cut, but she was an extra. Her name's not Fixer, but she hangs out with. There's a whole mechanics crew of people that Luke goes. Yeah, because he wants to go into Tashi Station to get the power converters, and it's a lot.
Sure, he does.
Yeah, and his nickname, by the way, by all of the people that he hangs out with, is Wormy.
Is Whiny Bitch?
No, you're close. It starts with a W. It's Wormy. So
Okay.
yeah, I know it's weird, but there's a girl that hangs out with them, and I don't know why I can't think of her name right now. But anyway, it doesn't matter. So for all we know, this is the first female he's seen other than his aunt. So,
yeah.
But anyway, R2, he says that it's old data, and that if he wants to see more to take off the restraining bolt, Luke does it. And then he's like, "Where'd she go? Bring her back," and then
pretty lady.
Yeah. And that's when Luke is just conveniently distracted by his parents. They call him in for food. He drinks the blue milk. Yeah, I know this movie too well, but
Wait, there was blue milk. Like, did I actually watch this movie?
It's a lot of the pop culture stuff comes from all of these little tiny things that fans have picked up on and just held on to over the years. And so one of the things is when Aunt Beru pours in milk, it looks blue.
Huh.
Yeah.
Okay. Because I know you mentioned that at the beginning of the podcast, and I just smiled like I...
It's okay. The other thing that I mentioned was bantha, and the banthas are those big hairy beasts that the sand people travel on. So.
Oh, okay. Which was another question, because there was a moment in that scene where like the logical thing to do would have been just to leave.
Yeah.
But Luke's like, "Dirt, I'm gonna go look around."
Yeah, he is. He's kind of proud of it too. He's like, "Come on, we can look at this. This will be fun." He's a little. It's like trying to get the droids on his side. I apologize for calling them sand people. I know it's some people consider it racist to call them that. They're called Tusken Raiders, so I guess that's the PC version. So I apologize, Shandy, if you go deeper down the Star Wars rabbit hole here.
Okay.
They're called sand people on the toy action figure. So
they're called sand people in the movie.
Are they?
I wrote it in my notes.
Oh, okay. Well, I guess.
Why does Luke go looking for the sand people when they could have just left? And I got that from
sand people. Yeah, I guess he doesn't. Well, there you go. It's in the movie. It's not.
Yeah.
It's not mean to call them sand people, but the Jawas, they are filthy creatures. So. Okay. Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, those little creatures that steal R2-D2 in the desert. And they're the ones auctioning off the droids.
Yeah, in that weird dumpster.
Yeah, traveling dumpster. Yeah.
Okay.
Anyway,
I will say, and this is just a general last thought on overall on the movie, because I was very pleasantly surprised by a lot of things, and there are a lot of things that I liked, and I'm looking forward to watching the rest. But I will say, just in the genre of sort of science fiction, futuristic movies, just in general, and books and all of that media, not just Star Wars by any means, I just find it interesting that they can always imagine all these, futuristic worlds, far off galaxies, all this crazy new technology. The writers can imagine all of this, but they can't seem to imagine a world in which our patriarchal structure doesn't still exist.
Well, you could think of the Empire as the patriarchal structure because there are no women in the Empire.
Wow.
But there are no women really. There's not a lot of women depicted in the rebellion either.
Yeah.
However, at the heart of the rebellion are two very powerful female figures that.
It's the tokens, it's So it's it's nice, but it's not enough. Even
Sure.
I had this note in my notes that all the pilots are boys. When they go, it's are we really thinking? I don't know what year this is supposed to take place in, but are we really imagining that in
so just
whatever year that all of
so just to back up a bit, it's a long time ago. So that's the only thing, is that it's taking place in the past sometime.
But it can't be the past because the technology is different than what we have today.
It's in a galaxy far, far away. It's not us. It's
Okay. Well, that's fine. But even if it's in the past, so I suppose then the argument would be that even in a galaxy far, far away, you can imagine all of this different technology and different types of people and different, but still with this like underlying structure.
I will say that it doesn't get better in the prequels, and maybe that's the focus. I mean, there's my timer. That's not R2-D2. That's just our little like. The cookies might be done. We might need to go get those Bantha burgers out. Although veggie Bantha burgers, we all know veggie burgers, they take just like 2 minutes. You just heat them up. So, get too dry. So, Shandy, I hope you had a good time on the show. I did. So
it was great. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like we could still talk a little bit more A New Hope, but Chris and Nick are going to get back here soon, and I don't want them to find out that you were in the kitchen. So I'm going to have to clean up our mess.
Okay, but all of those bottles of Summer Shandy are just going to be.
No, I'll hide them. I'll hide them in a freezer. No, refrigerator unit. You know that drawer that nobody ever looks in. I'm going to put them there.
Okay.
The guys won't find them, and you can come back. We can talk Empire Strikes Back. Yeah. Well, at this time, it's that time in the podcast where I need to thank. First, let's just thank Jay and Jack, because without them, they wouldn't make this podcast possible. So, but we are part of the Jay and Jack podcast family of shows. So, and if you haven't checked out the others, you need to use Hyperspeed and just go right over to iTunes. Check out your favorite hosting site for that matter. But check out the whole enchilada feed. You can search and subscribe to that. Or you can also just subscribe to the shows individually. Specifically Shandy's show. If this is the first time you've heard her, you should check out the broadcast.
Yes, you should.
You can find a lot more Destruction of the Patriarch over there on the broadcast.
Very true.
I mean, I'm trying to keep with A New Hope rules here, where 12% of our shows actually just have a woman on them. So hopefully we can change that a little bit, but we'll see. Without turning this into the broadcast, I do appreciate you joining us. And if anybody is out there that wants to help our show, you can also rate and review us on iTunes. That's the easiest way. The next level would be to check out the Amazon link, which I believe is amazon.com/jandjack. But you can always find jandjack.com, and that has all of the links to Amazon, as well as how to become a patron member. Your patronage, even $1, $5 gets you a lot more. Helps all the podcasters out. Everybody from Shandy to myself to paying the hosting fees. So, and at this point, there's a couple special patrons that I like to thank. I came up with some fun Star Wars themed names for them this week. So I'd like to thank Attack of the Tack from Tokyo, Revenge of the Earhart Richter, sorry. A big thanks to Molly the Millennial Falcon, as well as Ed the Letter Carrier Strikes Back, and the return of Maggie the Magnificent. We thank you for all that you do. And yeah, I don't know where to go from here. Usually that's it. We just blow up the Death Star. We go home. Hey, by the way, did you notice that Chewie didn't get a medal?
True.
Yeah, that was another big kind of faux pas that like a lot of fans like really kind of harped on, and Chewie's been awarded the medal in several different ways, including like an appearance by Carrie Fisher, I think on MTV Movie Awards or something. It's like one of those award shows that like she presented Chewbacca with the medal that he never received. And there's lots of other like fan, well, not fanfic, that's your thing. But there's been actually official stories written about why he didn't get the medal. But all we know is that the white males got the medals at the end by the beautiful princess, and the droids were clean. So your eyes just got really wide when I said that. But they're nice and clean and shiny at the end.
Oh, okay. No, I was like, does that mean something that I'm not understanding?
No, there's no sexual innuendo. Okay. It's all surrounding the Death Star. So
okay.
Okay, on that note, I usually say, great show, kid. 1 in a million.
Bye.